Ladies and gentlemen, this is a video that I have been meaning to make for almost 2 years now. This is a Ben Simmons is no longer a Philadelphia 76er. And I know the trade is now 2 days old. I streamed for 7 hours on the trade deadline day, and my instant reaction is awesome. If you haven't checked it out, I'll probably put it up in the top corner for you to watch. Fast forward through it until the Sixers make that trade and enjoy my reaction. Truly. What a day to be alive. Ben Simmons is no longer a Philadelphia 76er. We do not have to support or even pretend to think that there's something in Ben Simmons that has potential that can fit the Sixers. The Embiid-Simmons fit never worked. Now we can be honest with ourselves, guys. But not only that, we added James Harden to the crew. Daryl Morey is the GOAT. Daryl Morey, I can tell you, I was one of the only people who have ever supported Daryl Morey 100% from the moment he came in here. I didn't think a deal was going to get done, but I thought it was going to get done in the offseason. He beat me to it. Kudos to you, Daryl Morey. Because of that, I'm naming my children Morey Melly. All of them. I don't care. You know what? I don't even care. Morey Melly. Boy or girl, it's going to be Morey Melly. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get me to 1,000. I'm like 15 away. That's a low number. I just need 15 of you guys to tell one friend. That's solid math. Let's get into it. This is going to be less of like a crazy reaction, and it's more of a what do the Sixers do now? And where are the Sixers at now? And what does this trade mean for the Philadelphia 76ers? Let's get into it. First things first, we are going to have a unit: Tobias Harris, James Harden, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey. There is there is no way in this entire world that Doc Rivers can have a lineup out there that doesn't include one of them. So, let's bring on the staggering minutes. And even last night, the win against OKC, we started staggering minutes between Maxey and Embiid. Doc Rivers is prepping this team for what is to come. That is huge. That is something that is not being talked about enough, because our biggest gripe this year, our biggest problem this year has been the bench unit, the all-5 bench unit. But now it's not going to happen. It should not happen at all, but I can promise you it won't happen as much. And if anything, that's okay. I've stated a lot on other people's podcasts that James Harden is going to give the opportunity for us to beat our own coach sometimes. I love Doc Rivers sometimes, but for the most part, I dislike him. I'm 70% off the train of Doc Rivers, but this gives us more ammo to just have to put out a good lineup, and the Sixers are going to be better for that instantaneously. Losing Seth Curry sucks, don't get me wrong. Losing Andre Drummond sucks, but we're going to go out into the buyout market, and we should go up and grab a center. But if we don't, maybe Paul Reed can be that athletic roll man rim runner that James Harden has always thrived with. I've been thinking a lot lately, and I think Paul Reed could really, really see a huge improvement in his career playing with a guy like James Harden, because James Harden is arguably a top 3 facilitator in the entire NBA. We traded a guy who rebounds the ball a lot, passes a lot of assists, plays defense, and can't do anything offensively outside of that. And in return, we traded for a guy who is a generational scorer, who is a much, much better passer than Ben Simmons, and a much better rebounder than Ben Simmons at a much more guard-like height, which is huge. And Tyrese Maxey, I put up on Twitter yesterday the comparisons between the two, the similarities, and I made it in my video yesterday too, so I'm not going to be redundant, but I will tell you guys how similar they are in their stages of the career, that at the same age, in their second year. Tyrese Maxey is a guy who plays very similar to James Harden, but is much, much quicker than him. I think Tyrese Maxey is a guy who can really, really thrive off of watching James Harden play basketball, because that is a disgusting fit. Defensively, we're going to struggle as our backcourt, for sure. You know what I mean? But Matisse Thybulle, the fact that we did not trade Matisse Thybulle is monumental. It really is. So many of us, not me included, but so many of Sixers fans were screaming for a trade to include Matisse Thybulle just to get the deal done. But Daryl Morey said, no, let me trade 2 worthless first-round picks and keep on to our best generational defender that we have. One of the best perimeter defenders in the entire NBA. Is a very hard person to compare to on other teams, because not many players play the defense like him. The only guy I could really find similar to his defensive effort and length and ability is Andre Kirilenko, who we all know is an elite defender historically in the NBA. That's awesome. Matisse Thybulle really, really helps us out. But I also really just want to talk about the fact that Nets fans are now posting on Twitter Ben Simmons' G League highlights and saying this is the guy that we got for KD. And how nice is it that we don't have to pretend anymore, you know? How nice is it that we not only get rid of Ben Simmons and every Ben Simmons stan who I've always disagreed with in my career, but we send him to Brooklyn, our biggest rival. What better way to not only win the trade because we get the better player, but to win the trade because we implode Brooklyn even further because Ben Simmons is never going to be what they expect him to be. It's good. It's a good fit for Brooklyn. Ben Simmons can play defense, and he's not going to take any shots away from Kyrie or KD. But the problem is with that is that when Kyrie doesn't play half of the games, or he's hurt and misses all of the games, and KD is still hurt and has shown no signs of remaining healthy, you are really trusting Ben Simmons with the keys to your offense. And we've seen how that goes, guys. We know how that goes. We know how that narrative ends. It's not a good one. Ben Simmons is going into a perfect situation because you know what? It's not the Knicks. He's going to a much worse, smaller fan base, and a lot of those people don't even know basketball. So I think it's going to be interesting because he's not going to have any pressure, and he's never going to change. And that's not a good thing for Brooklyn, man. I know you're bringing in a good defender, but there is so much baggage that comes onto that. And one thing I'm really looking out for is I hope Kyrie is the big brother to Ben Simmons, because that would be a match made in hell. Literally the worst thing you could possibly do. It's interesting. Brooklyn got shooting. Brooklyn got a rebounder that they needed for sure, but what do they have to guard Joel Embiid? What do they have when Kyrie's out? Ben Simmons is not a number 2. Ben Simmons is a number 4 on a winning team. He is a defender. That's it. That's literally the only thing that man can do anymore in this day of age. And that the fact is that he doesn't even play. He quit on an entire fan base for a year. It would have been 4 years if it was up to him, and he got fined for it. And yet they're calling James Harden a quitter because he was the only guy playing when Kyrie and KD were out. When Kyrie took it upon himself to just be a moron and think that he is above all and not even play basketball for whatever reason. I don't even want to get into that. But to call James Harden a quitter when Kyrie Irving is on his team, I just find very poetic. I think it's very funny how quickly fan bases can try and talk themselves into things. This Sixers team got everything it needed. We have a shot creator. We've needed a shot creator since the moment I was born. We've never had one. That's why we drafted Markelle Fultz. If you guys remember, Markelle Fultz was a draft comp to James Harden, and now we have James Harden. We've always needed a guy like this. And you know the best part about it is Harden, through his years of an all-NBA, all-world basketball player, an MVP, a scoring champ, a multiple-time All-Star. I think it's a 10-time All-Star. James Harden's learned how to be one of the best passers in the NBA. Maybe because he got that from playing with Chris Paul, but James Harden is the definition of an incredible facilitator. James Harden is a guy who I honestly believe is willing to take that backseat to the franchise guy of Embiid. Not only did we get a top 15 player in return for a guy who would have never played for this team again, but we traded an expiring contract, 2 first-round picks, in which one is protected 5 years from now, and one is this year, which means absolutely nothing, as you guys should know. But the fact that we brought in a guy who fits every single hole, and he is our number 2 option. That is the most insane part. We didn't really lose a ton of depth. We lost Seth Curry. That's going to be a big blow. But if you even look at Seth Curry compared to James Harden is better at every single category. Even defensively, Harden is a better defender. Harden is washed, right? That man last year averaged 28, 10, and 8 in the playoffs with 2 steals per game and a block per game in 35 minutes per game. Granted, it was a 6-game sample size, but you know what? That man still did it. As long as Harden can come in healthy, buy into this system, in which I think he already has, the Sixers are going to be a scary team. The Sixers have one of the best point guard, shooting guard, /center duos that the NBA has seen in a long time. And strictly for that reason, the offense and defense, the yin and yang between those two will make the Sixers, in my opinion, at least for this year, conference championship or bust. I don't really expect them to go out and win a championship for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that there's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces, and we've yet to have them play a game together, and it's already almost the All-Star break. So you guys have to give them some time to get together, but Harden is that type of talent that will walk in on day one and immediately dominate, because that's what he does. And I don't just mean dominate 35 points a game, which I know he's capable of, but dominate 10, 15 assists per game. He's going to help us rebound the basketball. I mean, we just got one of the best playmakers in the entire world over the last 15 years. And you know what? He's not what he was in Houston, but he is still a top 15 player in the NBA, and that's what's amazing. We're going to complain about this contract maybe 4 years from now. But 4 years from now, if we are holding a Larry O'Brien trophy, none of that matters. The process worked. None of that matters. This is a huge deal for Philadelphia. A huge deal for Philadelphia. We won that trade, but Brooklyn had a good trade too. It's one of those rare even trades that people never seem to be able to understand because they always want to say fleece this, fleece that. But it was a good trade for both teams, but I do believe the Sixers won it. I do believe the Sixers pulled in a top 15 player for a guy that they willingly knew were never going to play for them again. We traded an expiring contract in which Andre Drummond was probably not going to re-sign next year. And we traded Seth Curry, who has been abysmal lately, though I do love him. It was an absolute must of a trade while holding on to Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey, in which Maxey had a career night last night, again, because that man is a stud. He's getting better every single week. It's incredible to see, and we get to hold on to that 21-year-old kid while pairing him with one of the best possible offensive players you can put alongside Maxey for him to learn. The Sixers have a bright future. A bright future, and I'm willing to play right now in the present because the present is just as bright. I'm ready to go, guys. This team is hungry. This is the hungriest team in the NBA. Daryl Morey, James Harden, they've been trying to prove something to this league for years. Joel Embiid wants to win a championship more than any of your favorite players. I promise you that. And the process. This is what the process is all about. This is the culmination of the process. It's right now. The Sixers fan base needs a championship, and that's exactly what we're playing for this year. Peace.